wish to begin by making two preliminary remarks. The first is that I'm a person who is deeply passionate about India. I believe in India, I live in India, and I'm very proud to be born in a land that gave birth to Shankara, Vivekananda, Ramakrishna Paramahansa, and many other living masters who adorn our landscape today. My second comment is about the discipline of management. And I want to gently suggest to you that there is something called inner management and there is something called outer management. There is something called inner engineering, something called outer engineering. There is something called inner education and there is something called outer education. Most of the degrees that we do, the MBA, the Masters, the Bachelors, the PhD, this belongs to outer education. And outer education deals with the world as we experience it to our five senses. Management very specifically belonged and was born about 150 years ago in largely North America, and was born as a discipline meant to explicitly engage the outer world. The contribution made by India and her rishis and her masters lie in the conquering the inner world. And the teachings of our masters invite us to delve within, that there is a substratum that separates the individual ego with that of the Supreme Self, the individual human being and absolute consciousness. And this entity in between masquerades as the self, and this entity, this fraudulent entity is the ego. So how then do you conquer this ego to experience the divinity within? This is what inner education is about. And I, in this address, I'm going to address 10 lessons that the Bhagavad Gita potentially offers us to conquer this inner world. 10 insights that come from the Gita. There are several insights that can be culled from the wisdom contained in our epics, including our folklore, the stories contained in our Puranas, and from studying the lives of self-realized masters. If these insights are grasped and internalized, they are capable of changing the lens of professional managers by helping them to view their roles from executors to that of trustees. We restrict ourselves here to 10 of them. Lesson number 1. The body is given to you for a purpose. This purpose needs to be fulfilled. The cause behind receiving a body is unfulfilled karmas in previous lives. We take birth to fulfill these karmas. This means birth is inevitable if the storehouses of individual prarabdha or effects of actions committed in previous lives is not exhausted. Alternately, we are responsible for the birth of our respective egos, since the notion of birth and death actually refers to the ego. This explains why the Saint Tulsidas from the Bhakti tradition said, our destiny was shaped long before the body came into being. Or this is why the Buddha said, whatever we are today is directly a result of what we were in the past. When we consider ourselves separate from our source, the self, we identify ourselves with the ego. This is my experience, your experience, the ordinary human experience. Further identification with the body and intellect follow. Once this identification becomes firmly established, we are compelled to take responsibility for our actions. We are then answerable and held accountable by the law of karma. Human birth is therefore the result of a debt. Unfulfilled desires lead to birth. The purpose of birth, as the late Satya Sai Baba reminded us, is to avoid rebirth. Rebirth can be avoided if our karmas we are meant to perform are performed correctly, wisely, and mindfully. Correct means in consonance with truth and righteousness under the guidance of a self-realized master. So when in the body, do not take ownership, because that is best left to the Supreme Intelligence. but do take responsibility. Ownership is best left to him, and responsibility for action must rest with the individual actor. 1. Our actions, good or bad, do come back to us. This is what the Sufi poet Jalaluddin Rumi meant when he said, "Do not grieve. Anything you lose comes back in a different form." Righteous actions increase our karmic bank balance and impact it in a positive way, while unrighteous actions tend to do the opposite. Actions that promote harmony in the universe are righteous. Those that do not promote harmony are not. We are accountable for both. Therefore, if I am asked to define dharma, I will say any action that contributes to promoting harmony in the universe is dharma. Anything that does not is adharma. The slate must be clean at any given point of time. It must therefore be cleansed every single day. Gandhi used to say, "Each night when I go to sleep, I die. And the next morning when I wake up, I am reborn." What the Mahatma meant in these poignant lines was that we must have full memory for the good actions we have done and consciously strive to overcome the consequences of bad actions. For example, if we had a rather violent quarrel with somebody the previous day, we must not allow that quarrel to mar our perception of that individual and damn him or her for the rest of their lives. The late Sathya Sai Baba expressed the matter very well. The master once said, "We must always remember two things and have a memory of two things. We must always remember the mortality of our bodies and the sweet name of God. But we must not have memory of those who have done us harm or have memory of having helped others." These are extraordinary insights of how we need to conduct ourselves in the world. The Divine Mother, Mata Amritanandamayi, said that we must learn to die to our ego, and for it is in the death of that ego that the doors of self-awakening are opened. Lesson number 2. What is that? You will learn lessons. Both positive and negative experiences occur in order to instruct and correct. They are meant to elevate us and not to punish us. God, good people teach us to emulate them, while people with negative qualities teach us to avoid them. This is the principal reason why good and bad exist. The fact of the matter is that there is always a reason behind everything that happens in our lives, irrespective of whether these are positive or negative experiences. Everybody we meet in our lives comes into our life to fulfill debts that were incurred in previous lives. We must pay these debts cheerfully. The late Shirdi Sai Baba used to say that if a beggar approaches you and you do not want to give him money, you are free not to do so, but do not bark at him like a dog. He also said that people will come to you in all kinds of forms. If a cat comes to your house, for example, give it milk and let it depart. Why did Baba advise his devotees in this manner? The answer is once again Baba. Sadguru Sri Shravana Baba, my own guru, never fails to remind his devotees that Kali Yuga is a Karma Yuga. We pay our debts and extinguish our negative karmas and build a positive bank balance in this direction. We are born into this world with debts incurred from previous lives, and these obligations need to be successfully discharged if we are to gain spiritual evolution. This means that there is an invisible sense of order that pervades the universe and governs us in a very palpable sense. The disorder that we experience from the outside world. Why is one man born poor and the other rich? Why does one child in the same family veer towards rebellion and the other towards orderliness? How does one account for the disconcerting complexity that worldly existence presents us at first sight? These paradoxes, born out of duality, are only explicable against the context of karma and rebirth. There is a beautiful story in the Bhagavad. Ashwatthama hurls the dreaded Narayanaswamy at the Pandavas, and the missile is hurtling in their direction. It is a deadly weapon and would have meant certain defeat for the Pandavas. Lord Krishna hurries to the scene and along with Arjuna exhorts every one of the brothers to put their heads to the ground. All of them immediately obey him. But Bhishma is adamant. He is confident of his strength and refuses to bow down as instructed. It is after considerable difficulty and persuasion that he agrees to do the same and follows suit. What was the result? Their astra flies harmlessly over their heads and eventually lodges itself in Lord Krishna's chest as it is his weapon. What is the moral of the story? When you receive life with humility and bow your head in submission, devotion and surrender, life will not harm you. When you give it back, it will give you back manifold. Insight number 3. There are no mistakes. There are only lessons. Just as managers need to replace the word problem by the word challenge, spiritual seekers need to understand that the purpose of mistakes lies in providing lessons. Its essence is self-correction. I say this because in India we have a very percolated notion of failure and a very negative connotations attached to failure. What I mean by this is that the Gita teaches us a beautiful lesson in that failures come to our life. Failure is God's way of telling us, giving us a signal that we need to correct ourselves. There is something that we are doing wrong. It's God's way of telling us, I'm always sending you to the green light, but you're always headed to the red light, and then you blame me. So the ultimate purpose of failure is actually success. Why? Because when you learn from failure, you take the first step in a journey of 1,000 miles to success. And accidents in life, they exist only in our imagination. Our karmas make us move in multiple ways and act in different ways. Good karmas, therefore, ought to be distinguished from bad karmas. We go to a group to extinguish our karmas. What we regard as mistakes and accidents are nature's way of instructing us by teaching us lessons contained in those experiences. This is why it is said that a wise man goes against the stars. This means that the moment we understand where we went wrong and take corrective steps, we transform failure into success. Translated in simple terms, our experiences constitute the real guru. In a very real and elemental sense, we are given experiences in order that we learn and elevate the conversation in our lives. Failure, therefore, is not a punishment from God, but a sign of His infinite grace, mercy and compassion. God does not give us memory of our previous lives, and this again results from His compassion. If we were to remember the mistakes we committed in our ignorance, it would make us miserable, dejected and negative to all that we witness around us. Lesson number 4. Lessons are repeated until they are learned. When we do not learn the lesson the first time, nature gives us a second chance, sometimes a second, or at times even a third. Being the all-merciful Mother, she instructs us until we learn. If we examine the matter closely, then we will discover the purpose of failure, then is success. This means that we must be grateful to God for having given us these repeated opportunities that come in the garb of what we describe as failure. It is nature's way of self-correction and guiding us to the truth. We grow when we heed the message. When we do not heed the message, we invite that result. We are responsible for the outcome. Growth means expanding our hearts, nurturing inclusiveness, and expanding our capacity to love. On closer examination, it is clear that we must be grateful to God for having given us something called failure. It is a powerful means of self-transformation. This is because the ultimate purpose of failure, as I said, is success. Failure then is something that we must treat as a necessary learning tool to accomplish our objectives. Insight number 5. Learning lessons does not end as long as you live. Learning is actually actually about unlearning. That is the way I define learning. It means having the courage to give up what you have regarded as sacred and sacrosanct and replace that with knowledge that is vibrant and relevant. This is a lifelong process. This highlights the more pervasive importance of context. A changing context or in your environment usually changes everything. It also illustrates the fact that to be a good teacher, you must learn to be a better pupil. This is what Mata Anandamayyi meant when she said all of creation was her guru. Insight number 6. There is no place there better than here. Receive life with gratitude. Understand that you are meant to be where you are, and it is important to view that location as an opportunity rather than as a threat. People are so busy thinking of the past or future that they forget to experience the divinity of the present. This is why spiritual masters over the ages exhort their followers to live in the present. The emphasis lies in living in the present and not for the present. The past is of no value because it is dead and gone. It is also past, P-A-S-S-E-D. On deeper reflection, there is no future because it is within the present that the future is contained. Viewed in these terms, the present is therefore your future and how you engage it. Lesson number 7. Other people are merely mirrors of you. It is not the world that is deficient, but our limited perception. When we criticize others, we are criticizing ourselves. Spiritual development is about correcting our visions of perfection and imperfection and learning to see imperfection perfectly. The existence of a higher truth in every living creature is a universal truth. Spirituality helps us recognize that higher truth in those around us. This explains the importance of developing even vision by recognizing that higher truth as in all. Christ saying that your neighbor, it is important to love your neighbor as you love yourself, is an illustration of this profound truth. Lesson number 8. What you make of life is entirely dependent on you. The past is destiny, the future is opportunity. Every human being has a choice to either elevate his course or trivialize it. Human life is precious. It is wise to use it to learn our true identity and not fritter it away. Life is afforded to us to accomplish the purpose of self-revelation. This is both real and possible. If the opportunity is wasted, it will take another life to achieve it, or until the desire for self-revelation is triggered. The two main enemies that we have to overcome are transcending the notion of I and mine. Such transcendence enables faith, devotion, and surrender. Life is given to us precisely so that we transcend it. Lesson number 9. The answers to life's questions lie within you, within me, within us. The ordinary man experiences himself in the world. The spiritual seeker must aim to experience the world inside him. Divinity lies within, not without. Further, we must learn to engage the imperfection of the outside from the perfection of the inside. This was the sum and substance of Lord Krishna's instruction to Arjuna on the battlefield, namely that the war within was more important than the war without. Insight number 10. You will forget all this. Maya or cosmic illusion will try to make you forget these lessons. The wise man goes against destiny by making the better part of him overcome the lesser part of him. King Thrissur does not change his mind even after the Lord discloses his cosmic form to him. The Lord offers to restore his eyesight, but he declines the offer. Duryodhana chooses the Lord's army rather than the Lord himself. Karna chooses personal loyalty over truth and righteousness. All of them consequently invite destiny. The same Maya obstructs truth. The same Maya, the same Maya Devi, who obstructs truth, becomes a facilitator when you follow the path of Satya and Dharma. The same Maya Devi who obstructs truth opens the eyes of the seeker and guides him to his or her destination. My closing comments are on chapter 11, which is the moment of revelation. In chapter 11 of the sacred Gita, Arjuna asks the Lord for a glimpse of his Vishwarupa, or his cosmic form. It is said that the Lord gave him Divya Drishti, or special vision, to enable him to appropriate that vision. The traditional interpretation given to this episode is that the light emanating from that vision was so blinding, but Arjuna had to cover both his eyes to protect himself from that divine effulgence. But the meaning is deeper and more profound. Arjuna sees that the Lord's cosmic form has many faces, innumerable eyes, glistening ornaments, and innumerable weapons, and radiates divine fragrance. The whole universe is contained in that form, and his hairs stand on end. He is soon beset by two dominant emotions, one of terror and the other by horror. This mighty warrior, who had no parallel in the universe at that time, is actually frightened. He pleads with the Lord to come back to his form as Lord Krishna and seeks forgiveness. He sees the entire war that is about to be fought unfold before his very eyes. He sees the past, the present, and the future collapse. He sees that the Lord is not only the ultimate personification of mercy and compassion, but also for Swami Rama forth the cruel fire of annihilation. Arjuna therefore represents the sadhaka, or the spiritual seeker. He is us. He is a hero who has yet to discover his heroism. His fright comes from the fact that he is not able to reconcile how the supreme intelligence can exist in both good and bad, heaven and hell, the sacred and the profane. He could not understand that the Vishwarupa is nothing but the Daivik, or the godly, and the Asuric, or the demonic, taken together. Good must coexist with evil, right with wrong, good with bad. This is why duality, all duality, must be transcended. When he asks the Lord for a second experience, and it is given to him, he experiences no discomfort. From this fact alone, we may conclude that the message of the Gita had finally gone home. I want to conclude with two remarks. One from personal experience. I discovered my Guru in the year 2007. He was 29 years old. He comes from Kerala, in Palakkad, and his name is Sadhguru Sri Krishna. Once we were travelling back from London on a flight, he turned to me suddenly, very mischievous, nice, and said, Professor Swami, give me the whole Gita, the lessons of the Gita, the meaning of the Gita, in one sentence. I was shocked and taken aback, astonished that he would ask me a question like that. So I protested. I said, you can't ask me that. There are so many lessons contained in that divine text. He was unrepentant and unrelenting. He said one sentence. I looked at him and I said, I can't do that. There were about 10 minutes of silence that separated us. But 10 minutes later, he turned to me and he said, in a very soft voice, in a voice that I could have almost missed, he said, even if you commit an adharma, if that adharma, if the purpose that you committed, the reason that you committed that adharma is aimed at the protection of dharma and satya, that adharma becomes a dharma. I have never forgotten that lesson. It took me some time to understand it. It's only after some time that I realized that it captured the whole Gita. That single line captured the entire wisdom of the Gita. My second remark is on Nishkama Karma. It took me again a long time to understand this. Very often we interpret Nishkama Karma as indifference. Dispassion is often interpreted as indifference. Even our chief guest referred to it in his address, in his inaugural address. Nishkama karma does not mean performing life with disinterest or indifference. It means the very opposite. It means that you must give 200% to the roles that you perform with zeal, passion, and perform it zealously. Like a good actor, Shakespeare was right, ladies and gentlemen. The world is a stage and all of us are actors. And the stage is often, always asking an appropriate response from us. We must ensure that our response to the world is appropriate to that which is demanded of us. So Nishkama karma actually means perform your role with zeal and passion. Like an actor who absorbs another body. One of my favorite actors, British actors, is Michael Caine. In the 50s, the BBC asked him, commissioned him to do a series on acting. And they asked him, what makes a good actor? And he gave a very beautiful answer. He said, to become a good actor, you need to empty yourself. And every day, ladies and gentlemen, as we grow to every waking day, we need to empty ourselves of what happened yesterday, what happened many years ago, and not leave any impressions in our memory. Which is why in our spirituality, we say to have poor memory is actually a good thing. But like any good actor, even the best of actors, they know deep inside that it's only a part. This is the meaning of Nishkama karma. My third and final comment is when Ramakrishna Paramahansa was asked, how do you live in this world? And he gave a very beautiful answer. He said, you should learn to live like a lotus. The lotus survives on the dirtiest of water, the filthiest of water, the most smelly of water. And yet, the dirt does not prevent the lotus from emitting a divine fragrance. It never allows the water to touch it. So you must be in the world and yet outside it. You must perform your task, but with dedication, with full of zeal, and yet remain inside, completely detached from it, like a cashier in a bank. If you walk into a bank, you see a cashier handling lakhs of rupees. Never at any time does he ever get this feeling that this is mine, this is mine, this belongs to me. So we must live, the Gita teaches us, live in this world and yet don't live in it. Be in it, yet not be in it. Perform your duties, do that diligently, and there is no doubt that you will reach your destination. What is your destination? To realize the Krishna who lives inside you, in the caverns of your heart, the spiritual heart. By heart I don't mean the physical organ pumping blood. I mean 2 inches to the right side. There's a beautiful Ayurvedic text in Malayalam which describes the Hridayam as 2 inches separated to your right side of the chest. It is not a physical destination. It is not a physical spot. It is a subtle location where the mind goes to sleep every night and awakens every night. It is this lotus that is submerged in the deep recesses of our hearts, in the silence of that lotus where God speaks to us. The Gita is about reaching that lotus. Om Shravan Bhava, Bharat Mata Ki Jai.